Okay, everybody. Oh, whoops, you're all there now. We're back. Sorry, we're back. We're back. Hey friends. Okay, I had to get a whole new service to get this all working. But here we are. Here we are at Kiama. We're about to get moving. Good to see you all. This is their, well, it looks like, here we are. Sorry about that. We got waylaid. Again, that relay at home disconnected. Now we're going to resume where we left off. I was talking for about half an hour in the system but we've got that fixed now. There's a external hosting. We'll have to use that now. It's a bit costly, but can't have that happen again. It was pretty annoying to speak and have it disconnect. But how wonderful to see you all here. Christ is born, dear friends. Truly he is. There we are. All right. No map at the moment because this is obviously the relay is not working at home. But here we are, back in Kiama. Where we finished off talking, we were talking about, well, I'm not sure how far we got. We were talking about the day path and the night path. We were talking about what this means, because the first commandment is about becoming, well, recognizing the Lord as a fact of experience. It's not just, well, part of it is you begin desiring and willing and wishing and beginning the practices. But the true acknowledgement means to know him. It's this process of day and night path. And what we explained was the 10 commandments themselves are the 10 tongues of fire of the one, 10 tongues of the one fire. And you have to look at them all and study them all to get a more deeper understanding of what each one means. And so I've got a lecture on that where I talk about a more essential meaning of it. But it has wider ramifications than that. Because just as you do it with the 10 commandments themselves, just like the Bible itself, and every story has a literal meaning, deeper meaning, a philosophic meaning, a miraculous meaning, and a mystic meaning, an essential meaning. So too does the world have that. That you can see the Bible through the light of the Logos. So too can you see reality through the Logos's light. That's climbing the mountain. And you get there through analysis. Analysis leads to, well, of course you learn theology, but analysis of what? Analysis is examining the multiplicity of phenomena. What does it do? It reveals through careful examination. And so we're talking about examining each commandment. But what are we expanding this to? It starts with analysis. Over a year's time, let's say, you're doing the depth practices. You're examining the multiplicity of phenomena that appear. This reveals, when you discover certain phenomena are the Lord, the multiplicity though, and eventually it leads to synthesis, which means analysis reveals the Lord. Synthesis actualizes. We see the one Lord behind the multiplicity of phenomena. What are some specific concrete phenomena of what we're talking about? Well, that's what we always talk about. Inner and outer experience. Spiritual touch. Grace in the breath. Spiritual vision. The truth of the heart, felt in the heart. A sort of divine emotiveness as well. But a very real overshadowing of the soul or spiritual gravity. A feeling behind the eyes of his eternal breath. But what happens? Just like your five senses collaborate to give you an eyewitness certainty over things, so too do the spiritual senses collaborate to give you an eyewitness certainty, to give you an essential certainty that the Lord is behind something. And eventually, this leads to, not only is that internally and with spiritual experience, but it coincides with, he coincides it with, coincidence coincides it with, it coincides with miracles in the objective world. You know, when you, oh, that was synchronous, you think, that bird, exactly when I had that thought, exactly when I needed help, this thing happens, right? This stuff happens all the time, but we can't confirm it. A thunderstorm at an opportune moment, a wind at the opportune moment. These are the multiplicity of phenomena. That's objective ones, though, right? But as we've developed discernment, we've become able to ask him questions, and it becomes obvious. And of course, to begin with, not every time it's him. You might see something coincidental. Look, there's some birds flying over here now. Could be nothing. Sometimes you're wrong. And then you ask conscience, you ask him, and he confirms it wasn't him. But what happens is, the happenings, he'll say something internally to you, let's say, when something happens. You'll feel him in your physical heart. You'll feel him in emotively and with spiritual touch, which, intrinsic value has a feeling when he approaches, which is not like any of your normal feel. These are things that are discovered in the depth experience. And these senses all collaborate together to give you a certainty. But again, we're rigorous. There's an epistemic principle that we use over time, a truth criterion that includes constructive fruitfulness, that includes a cohesion. So if something's happening, it's got to be logically sound, which means it's cohesive. That's the truth criterion of idealism, cohesion. It fits into the overarching revelation, let's say. The categorical exigencies of categorical thought, that is, logic. Connected with other revelation, other essential things. But we're learning, of course, in this process over time to determine and ask questions and receive the serene peace with joy as the answer. Serenity, it's not normal peace that, or the Easterners or whatever they experience. No, it's something, it's something you only discover in the depth of concentration without effort in prayer. The Lord's eternal breath And it has to come with the joy, or else you don't have an intuition, you don't have a discernment. And that's what you're most relying on, the truth of the heart. With spiritual touch, of course, occurs at the same time. And there's a whole procedure that I've laid out in lectures. And I'm not expanding that for nothing. I'm explaining how this relates to what we're talking about when we're saying analysis. Because this relates to a comprehensive vision of things where you can see, like I said, a synthesis, like combination is what synthesis means, sort of. A synthesis for something, to see the one Lord in the many phenomena. We get there through the analysis that I'm just telling you right now. You're examining, you're keeping meticulous records of what happens to you. You're reconfirming it. What did St. Maximus say? Check 3 times, or ask 3 times, or pray 3 times and then act. We can apply that to asking questions. We can ask questions because over a year to 6 months of deep worship and prayer and depth in doing the depth practices, it becomes possible to do that. He's still a mystery, but it becomes possible. And so that's how the 10 tongues of different miracles, inner spiritual experience, reveal over a long period of time a comprehensive vision of the one. And it's incredible. You go, oh, how could this be possible? Well, of course. It's what the tradition has always said. This is the pathway to union, is the comprehensive vision. And you experience a union with the grace in the breath. That is a union with God. It's not the full, complete, final union, but it's a union every morning. And so how beautiful is Kayama? We missed a bit of it because it disconnected. And so this is what it means. This is what the first commandment also means. I am the Lord your God. It's knowing and affirming him on a fundamental level. And that begins with this analysis. It begins and includes the Bible, because as it is with the Bible, so too is it. Reality is a Bible, as St. Bonaventura taught us. St. Bonaventura's path is this night path, which equates to positive theology. Positive theology means that the analogies and the concepts of religion can take us higher and higher up the mountain, which is connected with going into the macrocosm, which is also ecstasy. At the same time, we don't want to do that on its own. But it leads us to what we're talking about, God's light. We begin to see him in the multiplicity of the things of nature. That's what St. Bonaventura is talking about. You begin to see, it's not we don't go, well, the Lord's speaking to us with everything. Well, in a sense you could say he is, but no, a lot of it is just the happenings of nature. But he will, when you're asking questions, use birds, use the wind, along with other spiritual phenomena at the same time, so you can have a growing certainty over it. It's not this isn't false pattern recognition. It's a careful, watchful, rigorous thing. No one wants to be in delusion or fooled, believe me. But this is how it is. This is what it leads to, because you're able to discern. There's a truth that's higher than rational calculation. But we still apply a careful watchfulness and analysis. But in the end, the intellect is actually sacrificed to what's higher, his intuition. I don't mean intuition casually. I mean it in terms of becoming. You become towards Christ. You experience grace. And so you're experiencing God's light, and that's simply during the day. You experience God's truth by following St. John of the Cross's night path, by withdrawing from bondage, withdrawing from the surface senses. You can see God will show himself to you, like to St. Bonaventura, on the night path, it's when your eyes are open. Can you see the things through the Logos, through your growing ability to discern in combination with what you see, and see when, and be certain when miracles are Him or when you're just seeing something and it's not. You get that through the analysis. Analysis reveals, synthesis realizes, synthesis actualizes. And so the synthesis is the final thing that happens after a long period of time. You develop this comprehensive vision. And so St. John of the Cross, the night path, is well, your eyes are closed, aren't they? They begin open, but you're doing your concentration without effort in prayer. And what happens, it equates to what is called apophatic theology or negative theology. And negative theology believes that it's impossible to have a concept of God, that all it does is get in the way. And in a sense, that's true. They're both true at the same time. And so what that means is when you're doing your morning practice, you're putting all that aside. And so too are you doing that even when you are analyzing reality, when miracles and such happen and when spiritual phenomena happen to you. But anyway, what happens is all the images dissolve of the unconscious. They're the Lord is a surgeon. He grants and He cuts away. He's a gardener. In fact, you could probably even say maybe that's why Mary, or who found Him? It was a Mary, not the Mary, that found Him. Was it Martha that found Him? And it mistook Him for the gardener because He is a gardener, but He's also a surgeon. He cuts away the synthesis of death and life in a literal sense, and you'll discover that in this process. He cuts away what's not noble in you. For instance, if you're attacked, you deeply feel, of course, when someone attacks you, but you've also been granted a deep moral courage and you hold the line. And He'll grant you peace in the moment as well, but still, you still feel it. But what happens is you feel it, and then the next day, He'll take it away from you if you pray to be comforted. He'll also cut it away, so you're never haunted by anything. You remember, but you're never haunted. So any bad thing someone does to you, it's gone the next day. But that being said, you've still felt it, right? Because the Lord came so we could have life abundantly, as He said. And so, yes, we must go on that night path. It's fundamental to it being possible for you to even recognize this. And as people have even talked about in the fellowship itself, even beginning, their readings of the Gospels have become more essential, very close to the beginning of practice. And so on this path to the true and deep acknowledgement that He is the Lord our God, and He, well, what are we doing? We're to justify the Ten Commandments, to prove them to ourselves. Well, they can't be proven by anything that is here, by the false gods of existence, by the things of existence. You can't use everyday experience like Aristotle does to prove, because you don't all share it. You can prove it with the Bible itself, but you are born into everyday surface sense existence. Prove it to me. You can't. There is one commandment that you can show in Revelation is part of, it's justified by, in the 7 days of creation, we're told to withdraw. The Sabbath means not to work on the Sabbath. That is a time for withdrawal. It's saying withdraw from for 1/7 of the time. So that's a form of justification from the Bible, because it comes from a divine archetype. It comes from him. It's something he does that justifies the law as passed down to Moses. But to actually have it justified to us, it's missing something. We don't have where... Well, the Bible does provide its own justification, and if you read it enough, I don't mean just as, well, it's in the Bible, so it's true. I don't mean that. I mean, if you read it a lot, it provides its own authority as a spiritual, like it miraculously is what I mean. And so the truth of the justification actually has to come from you going up the mountain yourself. And what does that mean? Well, there's a higher certainty in truth than eyewitness certainty. Because there's an eyewitness certainty of the surface senses, right? We see it, we hear it, we touch it. Oh, it happened, it's true. Well, there's a higher truth than that. There's something more closer to you and more intimate, closer to your eye and yourself and your inner experience than the surface senses, spiritual senses. You're just completely cut off from them. And so if you really want to see these 10 commandments justified, you can, but you have to go up the mountain and find the cloud of he who is. And when I say cloud, I mean that as a phenomena. It's something that is shown as an interior, symbolically as a cloud, visually. It's felt closer as spiritual touch, but as the saints talk about, this is what true justification is. This is what true authority is. It comes from the I am. And what does that mean? Think about it. So Jesus said, I am that I am. And so the certainties are sent from within. But it's actually collaborating, like we're talking about just earlier. Over time, he reveals himself to be the essence of the object as well by showing you miracles as he will say something, or you see. But like St. Teresa of Avila talks about, there's an intrinsic value and intrinsic certainty that comes with it. But this is connected with the kind of personal certainty that we have. How far can one be personally certain of something? And this is the highest certainty. It's higher than eyewitness certainty. And that comes from a consilience of the different spiritual senses over time through analysis, which turns into a synthesis of seeing the one behind the many. And that's higher than, and you'll experience it this way, higher than rationality, higher than science, than the truth and certainty of science. Why? Because you're seeing miracles happen in front of you and him show himself to you. That's why. Also, it feels more, it is experienced as more certain. So it's not only is it that you're seeing the collaboration of exterior miracles with future events, whatnot. And of course you have to love him first and do the practices first. I mean, this is talking about going very far down the line. But I'm just trying to explain, you can find out for yourself. But this is where true justification truly comes from. All religion is mysticism at its ground. It gets its justification. This is like the transcendent principle. It gets its justification from God himself. And it's a higher certainty than anything that's surface sensory. Remember, science is always filtered through the surface senses. What's essential is felt within, and it also proves itself. He proves himself through the collaboration of, like I said, exterior phenomena, birds proving that he controls it and can miraculously intervene. But of course, that's after the long work. So it's not just a way of seeing the world, it's a, here, I'll show you. You know, it's a, yes, I'll show you, and then your friend will have this dream and then come tell you about it, right? Showing you. But again, it has, you have to, these are things that are shown after you have faith, after you love him, you know. Why don't you talk to me, Lord? I think C.S. Lewis said something about this. And then he went on to say, why don't you talk to me, Lord? Oh, you don't need to say anything. Well, no, actually, you just have to do the concentration without effort in prayer. Do your, and learn how to, although you can never force him to say something to you, and often he won't directly answer questions, but in the discernment, in yes or no, if you're asking whether you should do A or B or working out something, he'll usually send thoughts. And so C.S. Lewis, well, he wasn't doing the practices of the saints, I suppose. He wasn't doing the practices that Valentin Tomberg talks about. That's the issue. It's a difficult thing to work out. But you can go up the mountain, it's possible, and see it justified. But what's missing now? What am I talking about also with justification? I'm talking about authority. I'm talking about truth. What are we lacking now? It's also the difference between the existentialist. Maybe we should go up here, eh? This looks like there's a, yeah, I might find somewhere we can sit down. There is a difference. Most people are existentialists. We have to become the essentialist. And this is getting to what we're describing today. We're still really on the first commandment we've been talking about as well. The existentialist is deeply in the house of bondage. He hasn't become poor in spirit. But that spirit that he has no content. Why? Why? Because for him, the self is the pinnacle of all the experience of the surface sense world, of the world, the object. Memory, heredity, character. It's just made up of all the experiences that have happened to him. The problem is, there's no content in that, there's no essence in that. True content isn't from surface sense only, and especially not of everyday modern experience that kind of presents us as dead, right? We understand everything, that's grass, that's this or that, that's the sea, there's nothing new really happening here in terms of a category we don't understand at all. Maybe UFOs, oh my God. No, so demon. But so as far as it goes for him is that, and that's his, it's missing the future. And so he essentially is provoked by the past and the present, which is all tied up in the things you experience in the objective world of the surface. The essentialist takes the transcendent self not as some pinnacle of experience, some inward pinnacle made up of his memory. No, he recognizes it as transcendent, and the fundamental principle for him is following what's holy. But what happens in that process? The transcendent self inwardly becomes an object, a thing throwing. What does object mean? It means throwing here. That's all it means. So not material. It doesn't mean material. It means it's transformed almost like a lens. And the transcendent self becomes a mediator that throws the things that transcend you here. Thrown here. And so you experience the spiritual phenomena through that. And what happens? Spiritual phenomena through, you could say your angel, you could say, through the transcendent self. Send, he becomes an object that you can experience, that throws here. That's all object means, throwing here, seen internally. And what does that do? Content, authority, things of the future, things outside temporality. That's what all this is about. Think about it. Everyone is saying constantly, "Whoa, slop content, slop content." What's all this slop? Everything's dead. Groundless, truth crisis. What's this all about? It's this fundamental lack. People are made up with dead content. The content that makes up their soul is all just the world. You actually need authentic spiritual experience is what grants this luster of true value. Maybe I'll go back. Let's see. We're at the caravan park here. It's a bit... That's what's missing. And so the essentialist is becoming more and more that. He's made up more and more of his own future. And interaction with, for the essentialist, he knows that he's not the only one. Just as he has a transcendent self, so too is there a transcendent self above a transcendent self of transcendent selves. Yeah. I don't really want to go into the caravan park. And so you can get caught. You can get caught in the technical apparatus of the concept of your religion, and that's what you worship. And this comes to the commandment on no idols. Well, one of them is worship no other God but me. Because I am the God, and no other God states that they are the I am, here. And remember, when I'm talking about future, this is not ungroundless. And so what we're talking about a few things. One is, through this process, we become more essential. The content becomes spiritual, it's outside of time. And what does that mean? It means that there is such a thing as the miracle. That it's not just some push or cause that we see in the world. Because, you know, the principle of reason means that every reason has a reason, right? That everything has a reason for being there. Everything has a cause, right? Well, God is intervention from outside that chain of cause. That's fundamentally, if you are authentically Christian, you've got to believe that. You've got to believe that. And you will see it. Greater things than these shall ye see. And so the existentialist worships other gods that aren't the God of the self. And we say, what are these other gods? There's no such thing. Well, they're these determinisms, right? There are these necessities. And you think, I don't worship some false god. You do. We do. Why? Because we need money. We need food. We need, people need reproductive or desire reproductive satisfaction, let's say. Call it that. and say, Scott, don't you also experience these things, need food? Yes. But to be freed from bondage, again, it's the same thing. You worship God over everything, over your children, the necessity of your children, everything. This is why we have to do this practice. Why? Because God has the best thing for your children in mind. He knows better than you and your calculation what's best for you and your children. And when you educate them, they will follow Him, hopefully, over you in obedience. And a miraculous future is possible for them and you. That's how it works, right? Because He is love. He knows better. Well, how do you do that? You do that by putting the hour in the morning as the most important thing in your life that doesn't move for anything. You figure it out. You say, well, I don't have time. Well, you have to put it first, pray for the time, whatever. You put it first even if you don't have it, and if other things start to decay, well, they'll have to. Getting to the point where you can discern, and then He'll show you what to do. And so you say, well, yes, you have to work too, Scott, you have to do this, you have to do that. Yes, that's right. But you're freed from bondage to the point where He can show you what to do and then begins to intervene. So one thing is leading you to what to do, then He's the commander then, not these pushes of necessity. You'll still do certain things, but He will approve them, you see. He approves them as the ground of all authority. You worship Him. He grants permission to do things, guides you also out of slavery if it's something you really can't stand and need help with, towards what's best for you. And so the most important thing to get right is that time given to Him. And something will work out, but you've got to have faith that it will. And you've got to get to, and within 6 months to a year, you'll get to the point where you can ask questions and discern. But people just aren't willing to, because they're scared of putting that time in. Because they need money and they need this. He'll lead you to what you need if you put the time in. This is the dilemma. These dilemmas are the dilemmas of the past. They're the dilemmas of destiny versus providence. They're the dilemmas of the pushes of necessity and the forces of existence. But you have to, what do? They make you subject to them. You're their subject, you see. We're subjected to our own necessity, our own need of this A, B, C, D, our need to look after our children, all this, subjected to the need of food. So we're in bondage, aren't we? And we worship them by not looking to the God of the self. He's not comparable to them. He's more essential. He is inward. That's why He says His name is I am. He's not comparable to anything here. The only analogy to Him is us. Your own I is the only analogy to understand Christ. He's not comparable to the things of the world. The I am. Absolute subject. He communicates through the language of the self to those who seek Him in the essence of things. He is also Yahweh, meaning He is, He was, He will be, which is His name for historical time. His name for eternal being is I am. Of course, it can't be used in worship. Just like I can't call you I, you can't name Him either. It was only said to us or taught to us so we could use it as an analogy to understand who He was, not to use for worship. This is the idols. Careful of the idols that we can get in the way. And there is an internal security to the I. So too is there for His name. We can't use it. It makes no sense to use it. Call ourselves that. But the point is, when you discover Him by going up the mountain, finding the cloud of He who is, which can be found. This is the justification for the Ten Commandments. Justified by the variety of the depth of spiritual phenomena that occur. Justified by the intrinsic value and intrinsic certainty that those phenomena demonstrate. With the multiplicity of other phenomena, both interior and exterior, having a logic to them. The events that happen interior and exterior have a cohesiveness. He makes sense over time. They also have a health. This tree bears good fruit also over time. So this certainty grows and grows and grows. It starts to align with tradition, but you see it in a deeper way. Oh, that's what it really means. But it still aligns with it. You just perhaps had concepts in your mind that kind of stopped you from seeing it. But it actually aligns. Yeah. I think so. You're probably getting a better sense of what I'm talking about now. And so he's freeing you. And these gods exist, these false gods of existence. We say they don't exist. Freud, what's he? A modern, propositional, conceptual, dead abstraction understanding of Venus. They just appear in a new form. What's Moloch? Communism. It's a sacrifice, human sacrifice for a collective. Individual sacrifice for a collective. Moloch is. So too with other gods of existence. All right, let's find a place to sit down and read some of our book. What time is it? In about an hour. Let me just chuck you here for a moment, as we always do, and we'll have a look. Buy myself a drink. We can go without. We have another drink. All good. Okay. Chris Stokes says Merry Christmas. ZDMC, Merry Christmas also. May the Holy Spirit help us seal 2025 with godliness and guide us into 2026. According to God's perfect and loving divine will. Well said. And really, he is born. He's born. Now, essentially, really after Christmas is the new year. But I hope that you all were contemplating withdrawing, doing the concentration without effort in prayer, but also considering the things that have happened in the year, what was good, what was bad. It's also a great time to review all. If you've been keeping meticulous records, review everything that you have put down to recheck later with conscience and discernment. As part of your epistemic principle, it's important to keep meticulous records of spiritual experience, interior and exterior, to later confirm by asking. So if you're on this path, be sure to do that. Perhaps if it's digital, you can put little keywords in it, key tags, to quickly go through it all. We'll go for another 2 hours, I think. Because we actually did start at 12, so. And I have to get the train back.
Just going to go to the bathroom, everyone. There we are, good, we're back. All right, let's find someone to sit down.
I'm talking about.
busy. Naturally, it's just after Christmas. Not that bad. I mean, it's not that bad though. Struggle to find somewhere that's out of the wind though. Sit down. Do this. Hi. Oh, just a drink. Yeah. You guys have any Coke Zero? Oh, can I get a can of Coke Zero? That's cool. Just that. Thanks. Thanks, yeah. Thank you.
I'll try and screen.
Thanks, man. You too. See you. Okay. Okay. I think here might be good. Okay. Nice one. The stream where nothing is said today, or not much is said. There we are. Chuck that there. Chuck you friends here. What we got there? that? Yeah, that looks alright. Sorry everyone, it's a bit finicky. Yeah, looks alright. Alright. Having a look, of course, as usual, until we finish it anyway, Rudolf Steiner's guidelines. Or leading thoughts, thoughts that lead. This stream's a bit boring, my apologies. A bit tired, and also with all the errors, we had an hour trying to figure this out. That took me out of my groove in terms of talking. But after we finish reading, that should get us back into it. Better put some of this on. Oh, I'm just going to get roasted. Even though I applied earlier, but... Alright, should be okay now. Okay. How's that looking? Yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay. A bit more this way. Nice. Not this is not the right time to be working this stuff out on stream, but I'm feeling pedantic about where that's aimed. There's better views. Ponder, ponder. Okay. I suppose it'll do. Let's see. Okay. Oh. Go away with your cringe music, you hoes. Anyway, bless him. Was that where we were up to? I think probably. So Rudolf Steiner's ruling thought. He wrote these when he was near the end of his death, near when he was going to die. Although he didn't know it at the time, we know it's coming. So it's essentially a countdown to his death. But he is consolidating everything he learned through a life of seeking the essence of things, which is the depth aspect of the church, which is all authentic Christian esotericism is seeking the essence of things. So I don't know if he knew it was approaching. It was only, what, 7 years after the end of World War I. When you read his work, you can't help be compelled by the utter tragedy of the world imploding, as it is about to for us with AI. Things are still okay for now. if you counter worse than being devoid of spirit, being possessed by a deceptive spirit. Good, if you count that as good, better, there's material conditions for a lot of people still, though people can't afford housing. But it was apocalyptic, and there was a will after it all happened to seek something else. It was already there. There was already a spiritual impulse to go to the essence of things. But very much a lot of Christianity was, and still is now, locked in the mode of a kind of surface Christianity, a surface knowing, or having the idols of our own thinking and our own theology in the way of. And I mean when theology is used as an idol, not an icon, because ultimately that's what it's for, to open us up to the essence of things, to lead us to the top of the mountain, and hopefully to the beginnings of going into the tabernacle. And so he speaks for a movement to seek that. And with all the death we see, and he helps elucidate for us the tragedy of what happens if you remain unconscious to these things and become possessed by satanic demons. Because as we know from World War I, it can't possibly be the assassination of a duke that caused the war. It's a spiritual condition of, you can call them ideas if you want, lined up. Fear can immediately flick over into war. But the impulses, people like Lloyd George, people were completely anti-war and then leapt. A minister that was anti-war became the minister for war and abandoned a life of conviction, showing that it's very easy to be sunk by demons and satanic hierarchies. When you think you're independent and free, the only person that can free you is Christ. And that's part of the preparation for the contagion of demons. It comes from going to the essence of things. And that's what he was about. He talks a lot about truth, seeking truth, truth criterions, epistemic principles. And that's what the whole depth life is about. It's not seeking mysticism in a woolly, like a medium does. And it's in full consciousness, not in a lapsing into an unconscious possession as a medium does. No. As we were talking about, it's the multifarious concepts, the multitude of the multitude of experience, spiritual, internally and externally, aligning together in a cohesive fashion to reveal he who is as the one thing behind all these things that are happening. That can only happen through, or the noticing of that can only happen through a mind that's also analysing, not looking to feel better, not looking for spiritual experience in itself, but seeking he who is truth. You can only find it with a watchfulness. All these things amount to these more philosophical concepts or words align with what the church fathers and saints talk about, and monastics, when they talk about watchfulness. When you're reviewing the saints and what they talk about, you are seeing them demonstrate in a more religious manner, especially because the language has changed, their own epistemic principles saying what to watch out for, what the tricks are, what the devil does. These are all part of a general knowing of God and of the fallen hierarchies, so we know what to watch out for. The tradition protects you from spiritual experience in a way, leads you to and also protects you from in the negative aspect, because you have to face it. You have to face temptation and the fallen hierarchies. We have no other option but to deal with them. And the only way to deal with them and not be possessed by them is to, like we've been talking about all afternoon, because those fallen hierarchies use and are, in some cases, the necessities of life in the surface world. The necessities are pushes. You need it. It's a push, it's a force. There are other more obvious forces, such as sex drive, reproduction, other desires. Also, you can have desires that are subtle, that come from the fallen hierarchies, or they can be from abuses of your own soul. For instance, people who, when your lust has got out of control with the reproductive organs, pornography, for instance, that is, you're damaging. It's not about sin. I mean, it is sin that does this, but to take the stigma away from the word, you're just damaging your soul. You damage your soul in a tiny million different ways. Same with casual sex. You're damaging yourself and the person you're doing it with. So that damage happens to be what sin is, though. But yes, and you can see that in the long term. You must be able to recognize there's some sort of damage there. Easily fixed by the Lord. The Lord heals and resurrects even the most wayward soul, like a surgeon he is. You see, of course, with the East, it's the Eastern way is not a surgical way. It's bootstrap, bottom up. And that's why it obliterates the person. Christ is the master and a surgeon. And you find that out in a very real way, that he is the master, revealed to you. Which is why you spend so much time learning the passive active in concentration without effort. So his will, his grace can act in your being. And you're passive, so you can allow that to happen in the most concrete way in the breath. This is something for later, though, after you've been doing it for quite a while. And so what does our friend Rudolph have to say? He's essentially been describing what we're talking about here, the possession of satanic demons in the coming age. It begins with materialism, and we see now. He even described phenomena such as AI, that there would be a web-weaving semblance web, a semblance recombining of things in a spider-like way, weaved together. And it reflects exactly what the algorithm does. And he said it would be planetary, go all across the planet. That's planetarian framing, as the philosopher Heidegger describes. And think about it, we've been talking about spiritual content today. Content. More and more, the ideas, concepts, and words are abstracted, removed from the concrete, not only of the spiritual, which is the true content, the true essence of things, right? Which should give the luster to our words, give the authority to our speaking and truth. This is where our true authority comes from. He who is with Christ, in Christ, you will naturally be encouraged by and sense an authority. If you have the ears to hear and the eyes to see, you will sense in them an authority that the slop tube doesn't have, that the AI demonstrates. When you hear an AI, it just does not have it.
you can say the exact same proposition as someone else who does have authority and the Lord with them and the Word and the Spirit flowing through them, and you won't disclose the same thing as that person does to the people listening, and likewise won't have a sense of granting and sending a healing spiritual impulse, a impulse of truth to those people. Because that's what we want now more than ever, for our speakings to have a return of will and feeling in them. Thought, feeling and will together. And the Spirit. So when we don't receive a surface knowledge and then move on to some other low curiosity, we're filled with the impulse and the yearning for action in the world towards essence ourselves, to have it flow into us, into the world, into nature, and to other people, and impelled to do and to move toward the good. And so that's what these live streams are about. To speak, hopefully, with enough time, you begin to be filled with spiritual content, with essential content, not surface observations and surface memories of the surface world, but more and more you become more essential, more authentic spiritual experience of the Lord and his hierarchies begin to transform your being and make you more essential, and that transforms your speech and speaking. This is what the true becoming that we're all after. That the Nietzscheans, if they just knew the right way to look, this is the true becoming, the true living spirit, and what it's all about. To disclose it for ourselves, and through the desire to help others is part of that disclosure as well. It's not just for you. It's not for personal reasons, it's for divine reasons. So we can also, just as the hierarchy above is will to service, so too will we be. That's how it works in the eternal. That which is above serves that which is below. And what a great thing to have access to, the future. But to be guided by him and to ask, should I do this, should I do that? And that's what the saints have always been talking about. It's not a thing just after the fact. It's not I did some action and then I felt grace and some other spiritual phenomena. You can ask before you do something. That's what becomes possible. Of course, also we experience the calculative mind. You'll be led to do something, led down a pathway, and you'll think, there's no path here, there's no road here, Lord. You said go down here, right? This is just a simple example. And then you'll get another, let's say the unutterable groaning that St. Paul talks about. You feel that, it's felt behind the eyes, a rumbling, but felt tactile, spiritual touch. That's what he means by unutterable groaning of the Holy Spirit. And you'll go, and we'll think, well, there's no path here. It's dangerous to walk down this road. And then you'll get the rumbling, and then you'll ask, should I keep walking a bit further? You're still careful when you're walking, you're always careful. And the calculative mind would already have turned back. It's not dangerous to keep going, but it seems like there's no pathway there, right? And then you discern again, and you get the intuition to continue going. And then you walk a bit further down the road. And maybe you think the same thing again. And then you get the same rumbling, and then you ask again, should I continue? And then you get the serenity and joy as an answer to your question. And even sometimes words, right? And you continue a little bit further, and then you notice a shrub-covered pathway to your right. There, in fact, is. The calculative mind would turn back long ago. Yet I'm just giving you a concrete example of a very small phenomena.
And then you continue down your pathway to your destination. And so that's a small example of the sacrifice of the intellect, the bowing of the intellect to conscience, objective conscience. That means the Lord. It means sendings, directives from objective conscience, he who is objective conscience. And that becomes possible to access that and ask that. And do you see a million examples of someone knowing the future? You could go on a weekend trip and ask to go down, or should I go this way or that way, or be led to this place. And like I said, the calculative intellect will say, oh, I don't see anything here. There's nothing here, Lord. There's nothing here, Lord. And then you're led a bit further and then shown. This is a small example of this growing multiplicity of phenomena. And then, of course, miracles occur, especially with birds, a lot. And again, the spiritual phenomena happen. And so many times your intellect will think, I'd turn back here. There's nothing here. Then you follow the intuition, and then, yes, of course. And again, once you know it, you're not being led to a false one. There aren't examples of being led somewhere and then that there isn't something there, unless you don't yet know how to discern properly, unless you're still learning, and you might mistake the intuition. But there is a case with like a father. You know, when a father teaches or a mother teaches their children to ride a bike, the young child doesn't know what this is really, right? When you're taught something, you're led by the hand and you've put your trust in them, but you don't have the all-encompassing knowledge to know that it is possible necessarily, right? When your parent, who knows vastly more than you, is teaching you something, but you follow them because you have an intrinsic trust of them over time. And so much more with God. So for instance, you might be going somewhere and you see some location on Google Maps and you say, oh, this place says, maybe there's a church here. It says, for instance, what happened to me, this is a recent, these are just simple things, right? St. Albans, I think it was. It was just there's no reviews or anything. It was a complete nothing place, being guided to go to a complete nothing train station that no one would ever go for tourism or anything like that. I thought there'd be a small church there or something, and so I went there, and this is, I was praying a lot for a deeper understanding of discernment, deeper understanding of this particular idea that the Father leads you by the hand for things that are beyond you that you don't understand, right? Because this is one case where you can have expectations of an intuition of what's going to occur, and he leads you to something, but you're always safe, just like you are with your dad, right? And so this is moral logic. We're using moral logic here. This is where your logic goes. It goes towards the logic of the person and the personal that you're dealing with. And so went to this place, was led down many pathways following that, and on the way shown many miracles and moving things, spiritual phenomena at the same time, which is and then examples of this question where, but Lord, there's no path. There's no path here. You're saying go this way. And then following the path, and then, oh, there's the path. And then a second time thinking, oh, maybe I'm messing up these discernments or something. And then lo and behold, I walk a bit further. Again, the same thing happens. Again, same thing. Because led somewhere that you'd never go. The calculative intellect would never go to this train station that's just empty. There's nothing there. But it obviously had, I'd been praying to understand this issue of being guided somewhere where you don't know. Because that's the point. We're making the sacrifice of the intellect. We still are thoughtful. We're still watchful. but we're bowing to someone higher, using our careful epistemic principle because we make mistakes. He doesn't make mistakes though, if you're discerning properly. And so many miracles led to, and then ended up at this St. Albans place, and it was nothing. I wasn't there to visit a church or anything. It was there to be shown that I'd been praying for, and the miracles that were far greater than any church I could have gone to on the way. And to be shown this pathway, this idea that you had expectations, you were safe with me. You had expectations you might end up at this tiny rural church. There was no reason for you to come here, Scott. No reason for the calculative intellect. There was nothing on Google Maps in this location. But I knew, Scott. I knew where I was taking you. My son. We're all his son and children, of course, right? That's all I'm saying. My son, I knew where. And here is far greater. Here's the miracles. Again, following the epistemic principle confirmed by inner and outer experience. I'm not going to go through their miracles and the phenomena. They're kind of personal, but the point being, and then several, one after the other, again and again, shown this example of the intellect says, well, there's no pathway here. But always safe though. It's not like you never do something that is completely alien to you that would be dangerous, right? The Lord doesn't lead you to do that. He doesn't do that. There are things you could conceivably do safely. That's part of the epistemic principle I talk about as well. It's part of watchfulness. But this careful little example of following and being shown how several times doubting and then being shown. Anyway, I didn't give too many details there. Hopefully that was understandable what I'm talking about. The Lord will show you himself. But yeah, if you are engaging in these practices, of course, watch that lecture with the epistemic principle. How to discern divine will, because it's very careful with your own safety in mind. It's important that you follow what's being said there for your own safety. That's what the tradition's about as well. Still working? Seems to be. Okay, let's read a bit of this. Michael's mission in the cosmic age of human freedom. When experiencing... I'll have a bit of water first. I'll have a little bit of water first. Okay. Geez, the Scott never gets onto this reading, he says he'll do. When experiencing Michael's activities in the present, one is able to shed light on the cosmic nature of freedom through what he calls spiritual science. I'm not an anthroposophist, as I say, but that doesn't mean there's not many great things to learn from Steiner. This does not apply to my philosophy of freedom, which refers to the purely human force of knowledge when it is related to the spiritual field. One needs then to recognize that this means to not yet accompany beings of other worlds. One could also say, however, that the philosophy of freedom paves the way to recognition of what can be experienced by spiritually accompanying Michael in freedom. And that is the following. If freedom is really to exist in human actions, what is accomplished in its light should on no account depend upon the human physical and etheric or vital organization. What is free can only originate from in the I, and the psychological body must be able to vibrate with the free activity of the I in order to be able to transmit it to the physical and vital bodies. In a sense, that's what we've been talking about already with the return of the essential through contact with Christ, right? Because he's more I than I myself am. The truly essential, your I, your most inwardness, is nested in the eternal. It's not your ego, it's deeper than your ego, is eternal. And the more you're interacting with Christ through worship and prayer and concentration without effort, Steiner tends to, well, it seems like he's objectifying it in a sense. He's not. I mean, he knows it comes from Christ, but he speaks about it like a philosopher, of course. So, the more you do that, it is becoming vitalized. Christ becomes into you in your most essential being. You've got the deepest layers of your being. You've got a vital unconscious, a psychological unconscious, a vital body, a psychological body. What do we mean by body? Well, memory, right? Your memory. That is, in fact, you're dealing with the spirit when it comes to memory. Memory has an effect on who you are now and sends and pushes impulses. That's your psychological and vital body. But you have deeper memory, heredity, deeper things than only the psychological body. But deeper still than that is the I. And Christ's transformation transforms you in that essential being, and that sends ripples through your vital. He transforms also your vital and psychological unconscious. He's the surgeon, like I said. He cuts away and grants forces and invigorates you in the most healthy way imaginable, whereas everything else is dangerous. Other spiritualities, Eastern, they're satanic or luciferic, and they are done in a specialization and in dangerous ways that compromise the individual and perhaps permanently. So the master, there's only one master. If you try to make yourself master, you end up with all the things like Wim Hof, the people that take up Kundalini and do Wim Hof. Like the master of the breath is actually Christ. That's why we're doing this passive active, not a will to power, human created procedure of how many times you breathe in and out, or whatever this is demonic and dangerous. And you have reports online of this. This is why it's sacrilege. Of bone marrow disease, erectile issues, all sorts of things from people that do these things that are, when it's the master who governs, he's the surgeon. So, the free activity of the I in order to be able to transmit it to the physical and vital bodies. But that is only one side of the matter. The other side will become clear in connection with Michael's mission. What man experiences in freedom may not affect his vital or psychological or physical body, rather. If that happened, he would forfeit what he has become during the stage of his evolution under the influence of divine spiritual essence and divine spiritual revelation. What man thus experiences, which is only the divine spiritual activity in his environment, may only have an effect on his spirit, his I.
And this is true of, you can't render changes with your will to your vital body and your vital unconscious. You can't say, remove the cool here, generate more warmth here, generate less life, give me less life force, give me more energy. This is what it's all about. Christ can, though. You can try to, with demons, do some sort of physical thing to charge up something, like we were just talking about. But Christ does it through grace. And you end up in a relationship where you ask him. It's all about your relationship with him. What was the saint said? Is that one of the saints of the Old Testament prayed for 3 years for rain, and it rained after 3 years. And why didn't it rain before that? It's because of relationship. And so it's all about, you're praying for it's a personal relationship that unfolds. It's not a action to receive a reward. And so we have to get out of that mode where our prayer is merely an exchange to receive the technical distribution of grace. And that can actually take a bit of time to have it demonstrated to you, but just to get it. And it comes through icon. Icons are really important for this. Love first. Pray first for, you can will it first. Pray the Lord. Every withdrawal in the morning you do in your holy hour is a withdrawal towards him. It's a moral action. We're moving from a more mechanical logic to a moral, personal logic with the Master. And the more we do that, the more we get it, the more we use this as preparation to frame our understanding. Does it help transform our being? And also pray for it every morning, praying for love of the Master, the Lord. Pray for love of the Father and Holy Spirit and the Mother, love of the hierarchies and the saints and our fellow men and women, and love of nature. All these loves are granted to you, and that also helps with this comprehensive vision we've been talking about. Not a technique, not an exchequer for reward. You'll get that. It's granted to you over time. But we have to give the holy hour. Can you not watch with me for a while? Are we going to deny the Master here? All he wants is for us to see, us to strive slightly better than our best. And he'll grant us these things. He said, I will provide for you. Just like the birds and the bees, don't worry about such things. That's easier said than done, but you get it over time. And he'll reassure you. He'll reassure you over and over again. He understands. He's got more patience than you do, even for your own children, right? He's got more patience for them than you do. And more love for them than you do. He's got more love for you than you do. Anyway. The influence on his physical and vital organization can only be what enters the stream of evolution, not in his environment, but within his being itself, and which originated in the essence and revelation of divine spirituality, which is what I just said basically then, didn't I? It comes from Christ. It may not, however, be enmeshed with what lives in the element of freedom, which could be arbitrary will, he might be talking about there. This is only possible when Michael brings from the primeval past of evolution something which gives man a relation to divine spirituality, and which at present no longer intervenes in physical and vital creation. Doesn't intervene in the happening of the vitalic and the psychological. or the physical and the vitalic, or the vital, which means life force, vital force. In this way, as part of Michael's mission, the foundation for man's intercourse with the spiritual world is developed. One which does not affect the natural elements. It is inspiring to observe how through Michael the human being is elevated to the spiritual spheres, whereas the unconscious, the subconscious, which develop below the sphere of freedom, grow closer and closer to matter. Man's position with respect to the universe will be more distant and incomprehensible if, in addition to his relationship to nature and its processes, he does not also recognize one such as Michael's mission. Yes, it's the return of the Spirit, the true Spirit, to this. We're not denying science. This is something we have to be aware of. These methods and procedures and abstracted knowledge he gets to know his relationship to nature as something observed from without. That to the spiritual world is like having an inner conversation with beings to whom one has gained access by means of a spiritual observation of the world. I think it means it's having an inner conversation with beings, but you're only gained access to them by means of the world. It's like speaking with the language of the inner to something that's outer. He's just reversed that. So where he's going with that is that nature needs to be understood essentially. That nature and different things, as Aquinas talks about, there are archetypes. The categories are sent from Eden, let's say. There's a connection with everything, each according to its kind, as the Bible says. That means there's somewhere in the depth of the spirit, there isn't something that's sending archetypes that's related to the creation. The 7 days of creation continue in a more essential place than the surface that we experience in this multiplicity of things. The more essential you become, the more possible it is to see them. We're at a part of our development where we don't naturally see them at all. The Greeks could see them, which was how it was for them. The spirit was observable with surface senses. And people like Goethe, a German philosopher, he was able, through his practices, to eventually see it in trees. And that's where he comes up with his theory for metamorphosis and the development. And where's it metamorphizing from? The growth agent, the archetype. So, the primal phenomena. And just as it is with plants, so too is it with us. But he only was able to notice it in plants. And I think Schiller talked to Goethe and said to him that his ideas for this are, or Goethe said to him that they were his, he says to Goethe that, well, this is a concept. You can't see it anywhere. Or something like that. And Goethe says, what is abstraction for you? I see it. I observe it. Quite literally, concretely. I can see them. It's not a concept at all. Whereas Schiller, a more abstracted philosopher of the time, of course, like everyone else of the age, is dealing merely with abstraction and systematizing and the fitting of propositions together into an idea system. But there's no content, there's no spiritual content with it, whereas Goethe was actually observing spiritual content, which is possible. That's possible. Through how? Through concentration without effort in prayer over a long period of time. But that's lesser, that's far lesser than seeing the Lord, right? Than interacting with the Lord. But it's something that was at least revealed as possible through something pretty adjacent to science, which is philosophy. So, therefore, in order to realize the impulse for freedom, man must be able to repress certain natural effects on his being that come from the cosmos. This repression takes place in the subconscious when the forces of the eye's freedom come into play. Acting in freedom exists in humanity's inner perception. Well, think about it. When you're concentrating and doing these things, you're not limited. Your soul, you're dealing merely with your soul forces or beyond when you do the concentration for long enough. When you are moving around in the world, you're limited by the necessities of, rock. Can't push my hand further than rock. But when the will that's in the hand and actually extends out into the world when we want something, there's something beyond us that goes beyond us, that makes the world present to us in a certain way based on our desires and our goals. It actually, through the concentration, through the withdrawal, the Lord leading you in your practices, in your morning practices, in your sobriety, in your being removed from the bondage, having your will align with the Lord's will, through prayer, through praying for it, He transforms you partly through withdrawing your will from the world. That releases you from bondage, because you've changed what you desire. You're saying, Lord, my will which languishes after yours, let it be brought into what your will is. And that's not just, it is what's in the Bible, of course, it aligns with that. But what we mean is the Lord knows every one of us and knows the image of God that's in us, that is him or is placed there by him, let's say. Let's just say that he has the idea for us and more faith in us to reach that idea, that divine idea of our fully actualized transcendent self, let's say. And we get there by following his divine will. He has this idea for us, the perfect being that is close to him. He waits at the end of time and guides us towards that. And so it's not only the Bible and following his will that way, that's part of it, that's the preparation, right? But also it's directly interacting with him eventually and being guided through conscience, objective conscience and intuition. And I don't mean intuition in the Philistine sense, in the dilettante sense. I mean it in the philosopher Bergsonian sense. I mean it in the sense of the depth aspect, the direct interaction with the Spirit through very concrete, very discernible, obvious demonstrations from within and the miraculous without. Let's continue. Acting in freedom exists in humanity's inner perception. For the spiritual beings from other cosmic spheres who are bonded with man, it is otherwise. The beings of the hierarchy of angels who are concerned with the continuance of the human being from earth life to earth life immediately see human activity in freedom thus. Man repels the cosmic forces which desire to educate him further and to give his I organization the necessary physical support which they gave him before the age of Michael. As a being from the hierarchy of angels, Michael receives his impressions with help from the hierarchy of angels. He dedicates himself to the task of providing man, in the manner here described, with forces from the spiritual part of the cosmos, which can substitute for the repressed forces of nature. He accomplishes this by acting in perfect unison with the mystery of Golgotha, in perfect unison with Christ. So it's all, if you're granted to something by some angeloi, it's with Christ's permission. So, in other words, you could just say it's Christ, but it helps to get to the specifics of things. But it's with Christ's permission. And because it's the hierarchical principle, we're first interacting with things lower in the hierarchy, and then they help us come into closer union with Christ himself. But Christ is aware of it, of course, and wants it, guides it. So in Christ's activity within the earth's evolution lie the forces that man needs when working through freedom to compensate for the repressed impulses of nature. But then man must really bring his soul into inner community with Christ, about which we have already referred to here in these guidelines in respect to Michael's mission, which is to bring you into communion with Christ. Man, which is to re-sanctify also the intellect, right? Which is to bring the spirit back to all the science and propositions. It's to redeem thinking. Thinking that is truly enlivened and reconnected, intellect to spirit, which once was connected, although before Christ, connected in a bankrupt way, like with fallen hierarchies, when it wasn't the chosen people. And so man knows himself to be in reality when he faces the physical sun and receives warmth and light from it. In the same way, he must face the spiritual sun, Christ, who has united his being with the earth's being, and from that spiritual sun receive into his soul the warmth and light which corresponds to the spiritual world. That's very true. And this is true of the sobriety, right? We stop sinning. We follow, as we withdraw from which these forces have been weakened already. These used to be the governing gods of the ancients. These forces, sex drive, whatever you want to call it. Freedom became more possible as it went down the line. And so, that being said, now you're facing a regression. People even seeking out possession, to be possessed by these things. And that's what the satanic hierarchies want, to invade the intellect and possess it completely. So the left hand knows what the right hand's doing in that way. That's what they want. That's what they seek. And so when people say in some criminal case, I was out of my mind, that's what they're after ultimately. And what happened to Nietzsche was that as well. Where Willsamakt, will to power, possesses thought, and the thought just becomes an epiphenomena of will to power. And when he's writing, thus spoke Zarathustra, that's a possession of. And he talks about being burnt out by that experience once the writing ceased. Satan was writing that through him. It was a kind of revelation, a dark revelation, you could call it. It was received almost like the Greeks, in a sense that although it was a different, through like ingesting poison, you could think about it that way, that
his vital unconscious, his vital body slipped from him. It already was slipped a little. That's why he had migraines and such, right? And a lot of illness, because he already wasn't fully, in a sense, incarnated with, and then making it worse, it allowed for a kind of regression to, because there is spiritual in matter anyway, right? Creation is tied up with the hierarchies, and there is also the secondary, there's virginal nature and fallen nature. So fallen nature participates in the happening of these objects as well. And so that happening, for Nietzsche, he was seeing the will to power in the things themselves, right? Not ultimately full-on essential, but deeper down. It was a kind of material revelation of the dark principle at the ground of nature, but not of the true cooperative principle, the virginal nature that's also there. And so, I don't know why we went down that road, but he will feel himself permeated by this spiritual warmth when he experiences Christ in me. He will say to himself when feeling this permeation, this warmth frees your humanity from cosmic bonds in which it may not return, in which it may not remain. In order for you to achieve freedom, the divine spiritual being of primeval times had to lead you to regions in which it could no longer stand by you, in which it, however, gave you Christ, so he could lend you his force as a free person, something the divine spiritual being of primeval times once gave you through the path of nature, which was then also the path of the spirit. That sort of articulates a bit of what I was talking about when you go back to Greek times far enough. The original force is provided by the Father. This warmth leads you back to the divinity from which you originated. And in feeling this with inner warmth of soul, man will experience the growing togetherness with Christ, and that of real and true humanity. Christ gives me my humanity will be the fundamental feeling that penetrates and permeates the soul. And it's so true. And that true humanity that we lead towards is this loving desire, which is also called charity, for the good for everyone, permeated with a hope and faith, meaning a direct experience of the eternal breath being faith, and hope being illumination, but also a feeling for victory, a feeling for almost a deeper down knowing, which is what illumination is, right? Hope is illumination, divine illumination, in that you feel it deeper down, you know that this will come to be, and that is the experience of feeling the emotiveness of victory, or doxa. It's an experience of doxa too. It's this hopeful, it's like you've been touched by the certainty of the future. As we know, at the end of time, when this is all over, it's already been sealed. Christ wins. Christ in us. It's already been sealed since Golgotha, and he grants you the doxa of that over a long period of time. Occasionally, you experience the grace of that, and that has grows over time. That hope and victory, that feeling that, everything's going to be, well, if you stay on the path. That is something that has to be reminded endlessly. If you can, because this concentration without effort, this holy hour, continues your whole life. It's not a matter of, I've done the initiation now. The Lord speaks to me. The Lord, I experienced the spiritual phenomena that Scott's talking about. Now I can just leave it. The initiation's done. No.
Ora et labora, worship and work. It just continues the whole life. And how wonderful. How wonderful that we don't extinguish the depth that Christ can take us across our whole lives. So it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Incredible. Incredible. Patience. And you know, it's not me. These things come about in the right moral, according to moral development. But of course, this is what the saints have always been saying. You just got to get over the hump. The first hump, I suppose, is you haven't noticed anything yet. The second hump is the devotion of time over a long period of time before you're able to discern and have any guidance from him. That's the second hump, I'd say. Because you are experiencing spiritual phenomena, but then you have responsibilities, right? But your ultimate responsibility is Christ. Your ultimate responsibility is a closer relationship with him in the depth of things. But you might, because you have earthly responsibilities, the thing is, he'll lead you to fulfill them anyway, but he'll free you from the bondage of them to follow his divine will. So that's the next hump that's difficult, that the push of necessity, the push of need, and also desire of the part, and that's from the past fundamentally, will try to knock you off the path of that. And that'll happen through people, also internally through temptation. But rest assured, once you can begin, he can begin reassuring you himself rather than me doing it directly. But you just have to get over that hump. You dedicate yourself to this for a year and dedicate the time knowing and praying for it, praying for us to help be provided for, pray for the time, but even just give the time you think you don't have and see what happens, right? He'll provide for you. You have to put him first over everything and everyone. And then you'll do all those things better, but you'll face the pressure. You'll face the pressure of not doing it. But you have to overcome that. But you'll face the attack of destiny and necessity not to do it. But you have to overcome that. Get over that hump. And the sooner you can get to, by dedicating that hour a day, the sooner you can get to the point where you can ask him and not have to rely less on speakings from me. Hopefully this inspires you to do it. The better, because he knows how best to reassure. I'm not perfect. I need reassurance too, so I understand. Anyway, so oh shit, was that a bee? Bye bye. Okay. And in feeling this within a warmth of soul, man will experience the growing togetherness with Christ and that of real and true humanity. Christ gives me my humanity will be the fundamental feeling that penetrates and permeates the soul. And it is once this feeling exists that another also comes through which man feels himself carried up beyond mere earthly existence and feels himself as one with the stellar surroundings of the earth and with all that in the stellar environment is recognized as divine spirituality, the macrocosm in other words. This also applies to the spiritual light. Man can feel himself to be completely human when he is aware of himself as a free individual. And this is true of what that really means when he's aware of himself as guided by Christ. When he's aware of himself, you're free because everything that comes to you that's of any importance, you say, Lord, you do your Jesus prayer, do your concentration without effort, follow the procedure I list in how to discern the Holy Spirit, you've already done your morning contemplation, so you're already going towards the essence of things, then you're asking a question during the day. Lord, should I do this? But of course you do your concentration without effort in prayer until you feel spiritual touch. Again, I don't want to go through the exact procedure because it's people that are just starting perhaps or watching, but the point is You go to the essence of things and you ask, should I do this? Should I do that for everything? And what does that mean? It means that you are free in him, as he tells you what to do. Not the necessity, not the demons, not reality. He'll have you address these things. He'll have you work into reality, but it's always governed by him. And then he'll also intervene with miracles. And many things that only you know with certainty are, because they're specific to your situation. I can only give you an anecdote of something. You need to see it for yourself. But, yeah. Just trying to explain what it means, this freedom. It's freedom in him. He releases you from bondage, that you have this intimate relationship with a divine will, a divine plan for you. You still interact, you still have to work and do various things, but he leads you, and you can be led with certainty that it's a plan just for you. And you participate in that. You come up with ideas and he approves them as well, right? It's not like he doesn't want you to be his direct extension. He wants your participation as well. So it's a half-half thing. But that's true freedom, friends. Of course, you have the freedom of the close intimacies of this night path of St. John of the Cross, the more immediate and intimate and certain than anything can be in that process. And that's how you are freed from all necessity. You still eat, but you're provided for. And you're granted comfort and also convinced of that. He'll help you over time understand it as well. Okay, let's continue. This also applies to the spiritual light. Man can feel himself to be completely human when he is aware of himself as a free individual. However, a darkening is associated with this. The divine spirituality of primeval times no longer shines in the light which Christ brings to the human eye. The primeval light is again present. In such togetherness with Christ, this blessed thought can shine in the soul like a sun. The glorious primal divine light is here again. It shines, although its shining is not from nature, it's from within. And man in the contemporary world unites himself with the spiritual cosmic shining force of the past, in which he was not yet a free individual. And in this light, he can find the paths which rightly lead his humanity, if he understandingly unites his soul with Michael's mission. Then, in spiritual warmth, man will feel the impulse which carries him to his cosmic future in such a way that he can remain true to the primal gifts of the divine spiritual beings, although he has developed into a free individual in their worlds. And in the spiritual light perceiving, he will feel the strength that endows him with an ever-increasingly expanding consciousness and leads him to a world in which, as a free human being, he re-encounters the angeloi of his genesis. To persist in the original naive divine grace at work in man, and fearfully shun full freedom in the contemporary world, where everything is disposed towards freedom, only leads man to Lucifer, who wants to see the contemporary world denied. That's sort of a fleeing upward to feel better. This gives oneself over to a contemporary world where only which only recognizes the natural world revealed by intellectuality and is neutral in respect to grace, and only wants to experience and use freedom intellectually, but however, in which evolution in deeper regions of the soul must continue, and in higher ones freedom reign, leads this use of freedom merely intellectually leads to Satan, who wants, which is the objective hypnotic in the objective world, who wants to see the contemporary world completely transformed into a cosmos of intellectuality. In such regions in which man's gaze at the outer world is spiritually directed towards Michael, and his gaze directed towards the interior of the soul falls spiritually on Christ. In that thrives that soul and spiritual certainty through which he can make his way without the loss of his origins on the cosmic path to finding true realization of his future. And in that is, we're not seeking the freedom on its own. We're not denying where we came from, the past. We're seeing all of the world, the physical, in the light of the Logos, where it came from, understanding its origins, even spiritually. Remember, we're not Gnostics. That would be Luciferian, what he just mentioned. By denying the world, and he's sanctified it. It is his creation. There is a virginal nature and there is a fallen nature at the same time. It's an overcoming of this fallen aspect, which is in everything and with everything. It's the will to power. It's the grinding natural selection that's in everything. There's also a cooperative principle. That differentiates. A growth agent, you could call it. Cooperation versus conflict. And so that's essentially what he's saying there. (118) A free act can only be one in which no neutral process plays a role, whether within man or outside him. And this is to say that we don't really do anything freely unless it's a miracle, unless it's coming from our essential being that is actually nested, like I mentioned earlier, outside temporality. The true decision, the true yes and no, only happens in Christ, really. And you might be granted some sort of freedom and not realize that that's where it comes from. But the decision is not subjected by anything, is what he's saying there. No neutral calculation in mind. And that's what you're after. You're doing this whole thing so your decisions can be your future. That's what he's talking about. Christ has a future for you. The eternal has a future for you. The best that you can be as a ultimate, taking into account what resources you have from your birth here, but the actual action itself being an ingression from that eternal, from that potentiality, from that future that is him, free of all necessity. And that's the future. And everyone can interact with that, and just everyone out here, no one knows about it though, unfortunately. They know about it, but they don't know how. But that's possible for us to do. And it's what Christ wants for us. And we're deeply in need of it. To have divine will ingress from the eternal through everyone is the only solution to our problems. The solution is not going to come from what we already know. The solution is a miracle. We will be involved in that action, but the first step isn't some plan from where we are currently. Even when we have Christians doing the same thing, they organize the propositional understanding they have, we do, from the surface really, and we say, this is the solution to our problems. This is from all my book knowledge. How about you do your concentration without effort for an hour every day for a year, and then come back with your solution to save the West? When all those plans then become informed by and approved by Christ, because you've learned how to discern and you've learned how to do these depth practices. Otherwise, the kind of abstractions you're using are what we were talking about earlier. They're empty, because you don't really know what's essentially being talked about. You don't know it essentially. You haven't really experienced it. You know the theological concept, but you haven't experienced it. You don't have the concrete that's needed. But not even just that. Your plan can't possibly be the solution. We desperately need now the rich impulse from the eternal. There is going to be no movement that's going to be of any success unless it's governed by Christ directly and his divine will. And the people have first waited and withdrawn from the world for long enough to be able to receive it. And it won't be the scholars or the scientists that do it. It'll be people that have the rigor of those two things, of the depth of religion and the depth of analysis, but full of life, but they won't be from the formal world. It'll be mystics who take it as seriously, though, as people that do it. What we just mentioned, the scholarly but they'll seek poverty first until they actually know they've had the impulse and can confirm its divine will. Because what the hell do we know? (119) The polar contrast to this free act is that a natural process is suppressed in the individual's free act, which would be present in the case of an unfree act, and would give the human being his cosmically preordained state. You see, this is what I talk about. There is destiny, and then there's providence. Destiny is the preordained cosmic state based on who you were, your heredity, your character, and all the other determinisms. Astrology, all that stuff is actually another determinism. Psychology, whatever it is, it's all something that has a cause, right? Everything has a reason. Every cause has another cause. Every being has a cause. That's a temporal principle. That's destiny. That's necessity. That's everything we've been talking about. Providence is the free act from eternity that suppresses, or another way of putting it is, Christ, like a surgeon, cuts away this necessity or drive that it's temporal. This destiny cuts away, and also, again, remember earlier we said that science says no energy can be destroyed or created. It's a constant. No, the miracle does that. It cuts away and also adds from free spirit, from outside time. And so that's kind of connected with what he's saying here. 120. This state in which man lives in the present and future evolutionary stages of the world does not come to him through nature, but on the spiritual path by his bonding with Michael, whereby he also finds the path of Christ. Wonderful. Very true. Nature is just going to lead you to a preordained, dead thing. That's Satan. That's where everyone else is going who doesn't come to Christ, is further and further. Aren't we dying, friends? Isn't the West lack of vitality? We know this. They're banking on AI saving us. But what's that really going to do? Oh, generate more comfort, but you're going to de-evolve. Anyone who uses it starts de-evolving anyway. The vitality comes from outside time. And if you don't do it, you're going to be the people devolving into low creatures who are provoked by this, what does he call it? Preordained cosmic state, which I call destiny, which is what destiny actually is. Providence, though, is the future, what must become, where we're supposed to go, returning to the Father. Enlivened with Christ's loving force and vital force. Incredible. And it does not come to you from nature. It comes to you through, like we talked about earlier, the path of St. John of the Cross, the night path and the day path together. You leave nature by closing your eyes. You withdraw your will by worshipping He that called Himself that He is that I am. He's more I than I myself am. He's not comparable with the things of the world. His only analogy is your I. This experience, this I is your only comparable to Him. He's more I than that. He's more I than that. About halfway in this. Still got a while to go with this book. We never really get that far in the reading, but it's always a good stimulus for talking, though. It's always a good stimulus for... See how we're going here. Okay, let's go for a little walk and we'll bring it to a close. What a beautiful day. And nice and cool too. Okay.
It is possible to go to the things themselves, to become more essential. And that is to become, well, he is essence. Out of the interpretations of modernity to the things themselves, which is not a thing at all. It is possible to through the preparation to remove the idols of modernity that get in the way, through the combination of the night path of St. John of the Cross and the day path of St. Bonaventura, do we disclose the finding the Lord in the multiplicity of both inner spiritual experience and outer miracle aligning through a consilience, meaning a collaboration like your regular senses collaborate together to give you a certainty over time with the many other things that the tradition requires of us: forgiving others, blessing others, paying our debts, meaning, you know, the biggest way to pay a debt is just to ask the Lord to bless others. You know, you don't have to atone. The blessing is almost the greatest thing. Forgiving everyone and blessing your worst enemies. But through the analysis, the watchfulness of the multiplicity of phenomena that become apparent in this process of depth practice, of concentration without effort in prayer, as the Master called us to do. Can you not watch with me for an hour? Let us hear the call, friends. Hear his call. Don't deny him. I will provide for you. He says it. He wants nothing more. He's very carefully led you to the point of even just watching this video, hinting with your freedom in mind, because the choice has to be made by you. He doesn't want to force you to do it. You have to make the choice to hear the Master's call. Can you not watch with me for an hour? Can you not watch with him for an hour in the morning, doing the concentration without effort practice in prayer? Can you not watch with me for an hour? We can. And he will free us from the bondage of the world, free us from the bondage of necessity, expose us to his life, his uncreated energies, expose us to the future, to his divine will. And over a long period of time, it's possible to discern it and follow it. And that's how we're freed from necessity and the bondage of the world, as he did throughout the whole Bible, freed us from the slavers of the false gods of existence. And so through the slow spiritual practice and through the careful watching during the day and during the night, and that means during the day, like we're doing walking around now, watchful of things that might, by learning symbolism and how nature and things can be spoken through nature. The book Symbols of Sacred Science is a key one to see how metaphysical symbolism. But understanding he'll use nature, wind, he'll use birds. Again, you have to be able to experience the spiritual phenomena really to determine, but keep a record for anything that seems very coincidental and synchronous and seems like a miracle. And you can check later when you can discern. And what is this? It's like we were talking about. It's part of the day, part of the path.
eventually, as we become more essential, does it become possible to see the world through the light of the Logos because of what he's done to us in our night path. What's the night path? It means your eyes are closed. It means you're doing your morning concentration. That is a poverty to the things of the world. That is a night time to the things of the world, dissolving the concepts of the world. Dissolving the valuations and desires of the world. By praying, not my will, but your will, Lord. Allow it to be. Transform my will. Pray for it. After you finish your concentrations, pray for all these different things every day. It's about your developing personal relationship with him. That makes the difference. That's what makes the difference. That's when he intervenes. When you get it out of your head that it's not a exchequer for I do this many whatevers, and then he'll do it. That being said, the repetition of prayer is something we can control, right? And the more the better. We're trying to establish a praying unceasingly. The wings of that are established, though, through really, really deeply, eventually understanding that it's personal. And so, my friends, hopefully you can hear that call to action today as we bring it to a close. Can you not watch with me for an hour? The Master said it. You can. Look at my lectures. The practices of Christian mysticism, the chapter that is on concentration without effort in prayer. I'll see you next week, everyone. Thanks for joining me. I'll check the chats and then we'll go offline. Bit shorter today. It would have gone the whole time, but we got disconnected. We had to get an online service to fill a gap here. But hopefully you've enjoyed that reading and a bit of talk in the nice environment. It is beautiful. Looks great on screen. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next week. God bless you. And have a pleasant and meaningful rest of your holiday as we move towards the new year. Christ is born.